Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. Today I wanted to do a book recommendation video, and this is going to be the last section of my seasonal book recommendations. So I've done book recommendations for each of the seasons, starting with autumn and worked my way through the year. So this is the summer book recommendations, basically books that make me think of the season of summer, books that I think would work really well reading during the season, and obviously all of books that I have enjoyed and would recommend. A writer that I sort of in general think of in terms of summer and sort of associate with summer as a whole is J.D. Salinger. This particular one is obviously The Catcher in the Rye, which is probably his most famous work, about Holden Caulfield, a young teenager. This coming-of-age story where he moves around his life and tries to figure himself out. So I read this quite a few years ago, but I would say that the thing that makes me think that this would be appropriate summer reading is partly that some of his writing actually takes place in summer, but mostly because the atmosphere and the feeling of the characters as being restless and also sort of constantly moving, being constantly in motion, makes me again think of summer in this way that summer is such a short season, and it comes very quickly and often very suddenly, and moves along at a very quick pace, and then all of a sudden it's gone again. So that is sort of how I think of Salinger's work in general, just thrown into their lives. I would say in general any Salinger would work for some seasonal summer reading. Another classic that makes me think of summer but that has more of a direct link is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. So this is obviously the story of Humbert, a middle-aged man who falls in love with a very young girl, and he basically marries himself into her family. He marries her mother and then eventually removes her from her home. I think the majority of the book actually takes place during summer. There's a lot of description of Dolores spending time sort of just lying around in the sun. I remember a lot of passages specifically talking about the sweltering hot summer days. Also part of the book is sort of a road trip novel. So road trips again is something I really strongly connect to summer reading in terms of themes. This being on the road and moving to new places and seeing new things. Being on the move in general, I guess, is probably a thing I associate with summer because I have spent most of my summers abroad, so I think probably that is one of the reasons I so strongly associate travel with summer. And this is a fantastic book and a lot to think about. If you haven't read this, I would really recommend you give it a go, and if you want to read something seasonal, then this is probably the best time to pick it up. A book that I just recently talked about is Fever Dream by Samanta Schweblin, translated by Meg McDowell. This is the story of a mother and her child. It talks about how this relationship takes shape in different ways and what can happen when this relationship is pulled tight. The way that the narrative is done is through Amanda, who is lying in a hospital bed, recollecting what has happened up to this point. And because she has a fever in the present time when she is looking back, there is a hazy quality to the narrative, and the hazy quality and the general the time that the book is set is summery. It is a very short book as well, so I think it would be the perfect book to just sit down with in a summer evening, and it is very captivating and very easy to just fly through. So this is definitely one I would recommend for a short and very immersive summer read. Another book that is very immersive but that isn't quite as short is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. This is a novel told in two storylines, and we follow a young girl named Nao in Japan. She is bullied very badly, and her diary ends up in Canada with this woman called Ruth, and we follow Ruth in Canada reading the diary and her own story, as well as learning about Now's story through the diary, and her spending time with her grandmother. I just remember being totally swept away. So this is one that I would really like to revisit myself, but would definitely recommend for a summer read, for something that just will make you want to drop everything else you're doing. Lastly, I have two nonfiction titles, and first up is An Astronaut's Guide to Life by Chris Hadfield. So this is a memoir written by an astronaut about his life and his work, how he became an astronaut, all of the things relating to his work and his beginnings and later career. And the reason I wanted to recommend it as a summer read is because it is so captivating, and it is really quick to read, very engaging, and I think in general memoirs is a really good way to go with nonfiction books to read for summer, because they are so easy to get stuck into, say on the beach where you're surrounded by people, or anywhere else that is very populated. I think it really helps to have a book that sort of captures you immediately, captures your attention, and is very easy to read. And this book was just so much fun and really made me want to read more about space exploration. So this is definitely one I would strongly recommend. Lastly, we have another memoir, and it is Leap In, A Woman, Some Waves, and the Will to Swim by Alexandra Heminsley. This is the story of a woman who sort of relearned how to swim. So she had some fears with water relating to past experiences, both with swimming and with her apartment being flooded. So she decided to sort of face her fears head on and started to take swimming lessons, and steadily created bigger and bigger challenges for herself to do with her swimming. So partly I wanted to recommend this as a summer read because it is a very engaging book, partly because it focuses on swimming, and swimming is obviously very summer related as an activity, and she does talk about swimming in Greece and things like that. So there are some of the descriptions of the weather and the temperature rising and how that changes her experience swimming and things like that. I haven't heard many people talk about this memoir, but I found it very entertaining, very educational in terms of some of the things related to history of swimming and some of the techniques that I just take for granted. She really shares in a really open way her experiences and some of her feelings of failure along the way in learning or relearning something. Those are all of my summer book recommendations. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts about them as always. If you have any recommendations for me for summer reading, also feel free to share them in the comments. I hope you're having a really good day, and I will talk to you soon.